the wolf. He's the archetypal predator, dreaded and successful. Ever since primeval times, man has viewed him as a fear-inspiring creature. To the Middle Ages, and for centuries to come, he was a demon, a beast to be hunted down and killed. Today, however, wolves have become a prime object for behavioral science throughout Europe. From Italy to the Baltic, researchers are fascinated by these animals' amazing abilities.
As wolf biologists, we knew very well that wolves can travel long distances. But we were really thrilled when we monitored wolves moving across Europe in areas that are highly human-dominated.
We continue our story of three extraordinary migrating wolves. Ligabue set out from Parma in northern Italy and after 1,000 kilometers reached Mercantor National Park in the French Maritime Alps. His trail was monitored by Italian wolf researcher Francesca Marucco all the way to his sad end. Looking for a territory of his own for himself and his mate, he strayed into the home range of a local wolf pack and was killed as an intruder. Alan, our second migrator, began his journey in eastern Germany, moved across all of Poland, and finally, after 1,500 kilometers, reached the border region of Belarus. German wolf expert Ilka Reinhardt has been following his tracks from the start. And then there's Slavko. His odyssey took him from Slovenia over the passes of the Austrian Alps to Lesinja National Park near Verona. Slovenian biologist Hubert Potocnik has monitored his route. The question that remains foremost in the scientists' minds is, what drives single specimens of the European wolf to make such breathtaking journeys? Chances of filming European wolves in the wild are few and far between. Therefore, this film uses a set of wolves from Hungarian Zoltán Horkály's Animal Training Center to reenact several stages of the lone wolf's journeys. Interacting with wolves requires an intuitive feel for their behavior.
When I work with the wolf, I don't tell him, "Oh, good boy," and I don't give him nice words like I would do that with the dog, because the dog is working for love. Wolf is not like that. He's working for food, okay? He knows what is love, and he trusts me, and he's bonding a team with me, but he's not following my orders.
Zoltán's Kozsa will stand in as Alan, who on April 25, 2009, sets off from the Lausitz region south of Berlin and heads east. Alan was born on a military training camp and fitted with a radio tracking collar. When he was 12 months old, the signal showed that he had started to migrate. On May 17th, having traversed the forest belt of western Poland and run for 400 kilometers, he reached the Vistula, near Marienburg. By plotting the transmitter's GPS data, scientists get a perfect itinerary of Alan's movements. They can see exactly where and when he crossed the Vistula and which route he took further eastward. After just 1 month and 770 kilometers, Alan passes Warsaw and reaches Biebrzyce National Park. Accompanied by Jacques, her faithful companion, wolf expert Ilka Reinhardt has come to inspect a site where, on June 15th, Alan took an unusually long respite after covering a distance of 60 kilometers the night before.
He stayed right around here for 4 days. Basically within a radius of maybe 100 meters. We don't know what kept him here so long.
Alan may have been injured while hunting. Bringing down prey is one of the most dangerous situations a young and inexperienced wolf has to face, especially when he's on his own. A wild boar would feed him for days, but it's also a ferocious adversary, able to inflict severe injuries. A fully grown specimen reaches a weight between 150 and 200 kilograms. Anything but child's play for Alan, who barely tips the scales at just under 40 kilograms. It's a completely different story when wolves hunt in packs. Like these, out for bison in northern Canada, the tactics are simple. The predators keep the bison on edge until the herd starts running. Then the pack singles out an old or weak animal as its prey. This time, a calf proves to be the weakest link. The wolves are all set for the kill. Then, an amazing thing happens. A huge bull sacrifices the calf, rescuing the herd from its ravenous pursuers.
Hunting a large animal like this deer is always very dangerous for wolves, but a pack of wolves hunting together can bring it down. But what about a lonely wolf dispersing all alone across Europe? He can only dream of hunting deer and wild boar. It's too dangerous for him, so he will have to feed on something else. But food is plenty across Europe. He can feed on mice, can feed on garbage, hare, small mammals in general, and occasional sheep.
At the end of June 2009, Alan is still in Biebrza National Park, one of the last untouched sanctuaries for European birdlife. Its wetlands are breeding grounds for more than 270 species. Each year in summer, the swamps become the temporary home for huge flocks of cranes. The northeastern parts of Poland are home to about 50 wolf packs, roughly half of the country's lupine population of 900. So the chances are good that Alan will find a suitable mate here. Dariusz Karp lives in the midst of wolf country, always on the lookout for his gray-coated neighbors. He shares daily life with his four-legged companions. Having worked here as a park ranger for years, no one knows the terrain as well as he does. Yet even someone as familiar with the ways of wolves as Dariusz hardly ever succeeds in getting one of the elusive predators into the sights of his camera.
Although there are several wolf packs around here, I only see one maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Their hearing and their sense of smell are much keener than ours. That's why they hear and smell us much sooner than we can detect them. And they prefer to give us a wide berth anyway.
Dariusz's photos are in demand all over the world, since they capture the unique beauty of these fascinating animals. To him, as an environmentalist, it's quite incomprehensible why wolves, to many people, are still a spine-tingling sight and the epitome of horror, in marked contrast to dogs, who share a common ancestry with wolves. Scientists assume that man domesticated wolves as early as 14 to 16,000 years ago. Canines became man's best friends, while, with the advent of livestock farming, the offspring of their ancestors in the wild were regarded as a threat, endangering man's very existence, and thus were pursued with near psychopathic hatred. Ever since the invention of firearms in the 15th century, the wolf didn't stand a chance. And to this day, every means possible has been used to hunt wolves down mercilessly.
This is an iron spring trap set by poachers. I found it in the woods nearby. It's not hard to picture how much animals have to suffer when the trap snaps shut. A wolf caught like this would have been in agony for a very long time. He either had to walk on dragging the trap or bite off his own leg to get rid of it.
In Poland, wolves have been under legal protection since 1998. However, peaceful coexistence between man and wolf is far from being a reality. Prejudice and vague fears prevail, and approaches to the problem differ widely.
In those regions of Europe where the wolf was never eradicated, like Italy or Spain or Greece, the wolf is a problem, but is not a big problem. People still know how to coexist. They are not really afraid of the wolf. But in other regions, like in France or in Germany, where the wolf has come back after decades or centuries from eradication, reality of coexistence with wolves is not there anymore. So what is left is the full load of fears, of myths, of legends that characterize the relationship between wolves and humans for centuries. And Little Red Riding Hood is just the perfect epitome of those fears.
In eastern Poland, the wolf has survived all efforts aimed at his extermination. Huge forests offered sufficient habitats to retreat to. In the western parts of the country, too, the species has re-emerged with a stable population of 33 families. Southern Europe is home to the Balkan population. With up to 5,000 wolves, it is the largest group on the continent. Its northernmost branch, in Slovenia, is made up of 11 wolf packs. One of their members is Slavko, our third migrator. The karst limestone plateau of Slovenia has become a haven for many species that were once widespread all over Europe. Among them, large predators like the wolf and the brown bear. But as they share the same hunting grounds, they are also ardent competitors for prey. When it comes to a confrontation over a wild boar, the wolf has to give in. One short swipe of the bear's paw could be fatal. A scene which might just as easily take place in the wild. But in this case, the protagonists belong to Zoltán Horkály's team of animal actors. The Hungarian keeps a tight grip on his cast and makes sure things won't get out of hand. The Dinaric Alps north of Trieste are the workplace of biologists Hubert Potocnik and Alexandra Majic. One of their tasks is to keep track of the population's size. And if you want to do a roll call among wolves, you have to howl like one. But tonight, they don't respond.
Wolves can hear howlings even more than 4 kilometers away. So this is one type of marking their resources, their territory, their pups, the prey, and so on.
11 wolf families are presently living in Slovenia. They raise their offspring in well-hidden caves. Hubert knows nearly all of them.
This is a limestone area with karst phenomena like cracks, holes, caves, and so on, and there is plenty of it. And this is also a terrain that is really difficult to pass for a human.
He's looking for the site where, back in 2010, he made a remarkable discovery.
This is the den where Slouts was born. I will check inside. Inside. There is a little bit narrow here. Here there was a litter in 2010, and that was a litter of slouts. When we came here, we found only a dead pup, which was of age of 6 or 7 weeks.
When the body was examined, genetic tests proved that the pup was a brother of Slavko. One year later, in July 2011, the Slovenian biologists managed to capture the young wolf and tranquilize him.
Here is the place where we captured the wolf Slavko. He was a young male. He was quite a big one, heavy one. It was 40 kilos.
Slavko was given a health check and then fitted with a radio tracking collar to establish a pattern of his movements.
With this collar, we were able to follow every step of the wolf. We programmed that collar that it take one location per every 3 hours. So we had 7 to 8 locations per day of that wolf. It was really exciting to follow this wolf, but the real excitement was actually happened in the middle of winter, on the 19th of December, when he left his pack and started with dispersal. Start to search for a mate, to search for his own place.
Slavko left his home territory in the mountains north of Trieste behind and headed north. What made him choose this particular direction is still a mystery. Using the data from Slavko's radio transmitter, Hubert Potocnik sets out to retrace the lone wolf's impressive migration. The plotted data clearly indicate that, for several days, Slavko stayed in the Dinaric Alps, roaming to and fro. Then he seems to have settled on a distinct route. He soon faces his first challenge. He must find a way to cross the busy motorway between Trieste and Ljubljana. It's fairly safe to assume that major thoroughfares were nothing new to Slavko. There are several motorways crisscrossing the territory he grew up in. Nine days later, on December 28th, he reaches Ljubljana's airport. Access is strictly prohibited, so we may only move near the runway when accompanied by the airport's security staff.
Okay, yeah, this is the location where Slouts was stopped by this fence. After 3 days of staying in a forest nearby, feeding up on 2 foxes, and nobody knows what forced him to come here, and yeah, he stayed here in front of this fence.
Slavko turns around and heads for the Karavankas, a mountain range between Slovenia and Austria, with peaks up to 2,000 meters high. It's midwinter, and this year conditions are particularly inclement, with banks of snow often 6 meters deep. Nearly every step a migrating wolf takes is a step into the unknown. In the last days of December, Slavko encounters another formidable obstacle. It's the Drava River, just south of Klagenfurt in Austria.
In his parents' territory, he never saw a running water because it is karst. So such river was something new to him. So it was really challenging for him to cross such a big river.
During the night of New Year's Eve, Slavko takes the plunge at a spot where the river is 280 meters wide. Having braved an arduous swim, he reaches the heights above Klagenfurt. But what awaits him here must have made him run in panic. A wolf's hearing is about twice as sensitive as that of a human being. Exploding fireworks come close to his threshold of pain. Half mad with fear and terror, Slavko flees northward.
We had quite a luck with the Slavs that we had the opportunity that he start with such a dispersion. We don't have many times such opportunity to follow in such a details to a certain wolf that live in such a human-dominated landscape like he was.
Compared with the area around Klagenfurt, the primeval forest of Augustów in northeastern Poland is a haven of tranquility. This is where Alan ranged in the summer of 2009. Back then, the area was already home to several families of the Baltic wolf population. These days their number has risen to 10 packs, so it's quite likely that Alan ran across some of the locals. At the end of each summer, the 1-year-olds leave their parents' pack. With increasing independence, the radius of their movement steadily extends, until they finally drift away for good and establish a territory of their own. But rarely does a specimen set off on a voyage of such extremes as Alan. He's been around for 7 weeks now, moving in the border area between Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus, parts of which can prove a dangerous ground for a wolf. In contrast to Poland, wolves are still fair game in Lithuania and Belarus. Adam Kolator, a forester in the Augustów forest, has a keen eye for wolf tracks.
This was once a small waterhole, but this year it's been so dry that all that's left is mud. You can see quite clearly that wild boar, deer, and elk have stopped by, and there are lots of wolf tracks too.
Adam is an avowed wolf hunter. So far he's bagged 2 of them across the border in Belarus. He takes a critical view of the state of things in Poland.
In my opinion, hunting wolves ought to be permitted the same way it is for other game, which simply means monitoring and limiting the number of kills, at least in our region. I'm not talking about areas where wolves are rare. That's where wolves should be protected, of course. But up here, there was never any indication that they would become extinct. And I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be hunted now.
To the forester, the wolf is a predator that has to be kept in check. Perhaps the earliest reflection on the wolf as a power to be harnessed survives in Nordic mythology. The giantess Angraboda and the god Loki sired the Fenris wolf, who, according to a prophecy, would become a mighty demon. That's why Tyr, the god of war, brought him into the world of the gods. Fenris grew steadily day by day. Intimidated, the gods laid him in iron chains to no avail. Then dwarves spun Gleipnir a magic thread, woven from the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the beard of a woman, the spittle of a bird, the sound of a cat's footfall, and the roots of a mountain. Sure of his powers, the Fenris wolf let himself be bound with this new shackle. But only if Tyr puts his right hand between the wolf's jaws as a sign of trust. When the demon realized that he couldn't free himself, he bit off the war god's hand. For now, the gods were saved. Ever since then, the Fenris wolf has been under the spell of the magic thread. A sword keeps his jaws apart. But when Ragnarok comes, the end of days, the demon will break free and devour Odin, the father of all gods. Even today, the concept of the wolf as a demon still provides for heated discussions. That's why scientists all over Europe try to gather as much data as possible to enable a better understanding of wolves and their behavior. At the end of August 2009, Alan has finally left the border region and is now approaching the ring of motorways around Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania.
We know where we are and what lies in this direction. But poor Alan must have gone on for a considerable stretch along here before entering these woods, probably thinking, great, I'm out of this nightmare.
During the night of September 2nd, Alan is still on a heading that will take him into the city's center. The sounds of civilization must have taken on an ever more menacing character. Ultimately, he seems to have realized that this was a dead end. Alan changes course and heads southeast.
He kept going for another 30 kilometers in this direction, and then off to Belarus.
The next morning, Ilka too approaches the frontier between Lithuania and Belarus, the outer border of the European Union. A string of watchtowers has been erected to prevent illegal crossings. Ilka meets with two Lithuanian conservationists who are active on behalf of Lithuania's wolves.
Hi. Hi there. I'm Ilka. Ilka Reinhardt from Germany.
Accompanied by a Lithuanian border guard, they want to find the spot where Alan crossed the border and moved onto hazardous terrain.
We know that Belarus has drastically reduced the number of wolves. As recently as a few years ago, there were still some 2,000 specimens. Today, our best estimate is that there are only about 600 of them left.
It's an emotional moment for Ilka Reinhardt. She's now 1,500 kilometers from the spot where she had radio-collared Alan back in 2009, looking out over a wide open plain stretching eastward. This is where she lost track of Alan.
Somewhere over there, Alan's journey ended. We know that he moved on from here and stayed on the Belarusian side for at least 6 weeks. Then, I'm afraid, the transmitter stopped working. So we can't tell what happened to him, whether he is still alive or not.
On October 12, 2009, the transmitter on Alan's collar fell silent. Maybe he somehow got rid of his collar and started a family of his own. We will never know. It took Alan 66 days to migrate from eastern Germany, across Poland and Lithuania, all the way to Belarus. It's a singular record and a scientific first. Never before has a wolf fitted with a tracking collar provided such a wealth of data over such a vast distance.
We don't know how many wolves will actually start their long-distance journeys. And we cannot predict which wolf in a pack will leave. I know they are normally young animals, but not all young animals actually leave their pack. But through our GPS collars, we can find more information about this long-distance travel. And they are very important. They're very important for at least two reasons. Because these long-distance journeys are actually the fundamental tool to maintain the connectivity within the 10 major wolf populations across Europe. And the second most important thing is that through this long-distance journey, wolves can recolonize new areas, such as Central Europe.
How migrating wolves can provide for genetic exchange between different populations is exemplified by Slavko. He stems from the Balkan population and has made his way into the habitat of alpine wolves. In December 2011, he started to migrate northward from Slovenia to Austria, bypassed the city of Klagenfurt, then changed to a westward course. On January 17, 2012, his GPS data relocate him near Spital, at a peak in the high Tauern Mountains. Why of all places did he choose an alpine pass 2,600 meters high? What urged him to brave an icy wasteland like this in midwinter? "11 days later, Slavko faces another obstacle. The Schwarzach Gorge cuts deep into the Defreg Alps.
This is a slope where the wolf has stuck. He tried to come down for several times, but he has been stopped by those cliffs. He has been struggling with the really steep slopes for 3 days. So that was probably the factor that he decided to remove back to the south and find a new way.
Slavko is now heading towards Italy. After a few days, he reaches South Tyrol, leaving behind unmistakable proof of his presence on a ski slope near Toblach. Together with a local ranger, Hubert Potocnik investigates the site where, in 2012, Slavko had briefly caused a stir. According to his GPS data, he was prowling the woods above the ski resort. Searching for prey, he ventured into the immediate vicinity of civilization.
In the night from 4th to 5th February, Slouts was killed a roe deer here near the ski slope. It's maybe 20 meters from the ski slope.
Where winter sport fans calmly ski their way down the runs today, Slavko was once making headlines. Ski instructor Walter Niederkofler recalls the event.
I was looking up the slope to see if the snow guns were working properly when I spotted what I thought was a dog trotting across the slope up to the lift pylon over there. I went up there later with some kids for their skiing lesson. Suddenly, the kids started yelling that there was lots of blood in the snow and a dead roe deer. We went for a closer look, and there really was a roe deer, partly eaten. The first thing that occurred to me was, hey, that could have been the dog. Later on, we heard that it was apparently a wolf.
From then on, the public began taking an active interest in Slavko's migration. The press regularly reports on his progress, and once he reaches Italy, the headlines wax romantic. Lone wolf in search of his Giulia, Grande Amore. Italians seem to harbor a deeply ingrained sympathy for the wolf. It stems from one of the founding myths of their country, the tale of Romulus and Remus. According to legend, King Amulius of Alba Longa had ordered the newborn twins to be cast away in a wicker basket on the river Tiber. Since they were the only male descendants of his deposed brother, the usurper was dead set on denying them any chance of succession to the throne. After being tossed to and fro, the basket got stuck in a stretch of reeds along the riverbank. There, the baby's cries caught the attention of a prowling she-wolf. But in a wondrous turn of events, the she-wolf, instead of devouring the helpless infants, fed them with her milk. The time would come when one of the boys, Romulus, became the founder of Rome. In March 2012, Slavko has finally mastered the Alps and descends into the vine region of Valpolicella. He crosses the vineyards and reaches a wildlife park where he meets other wolves. With spring approaching fast now, time is running out if he wants to find a mate. Unlike dogs, she-wolves are only in heat once a year, from January to March. Yet apart from the time factor, another problem presents itself.
He stayed here for 11 days here. We found out that that was the reason he stayed here. So in this cage there are 3 wolves, 2 males and 1 female. He probably tried to get into contact with the wolves, especially because it was at the end of mating season at that time. But since he couldn't get into contact, he couldn't get in, he probably proceeded his way to the north back.
Slavko's route takes him to Lesinia National Park, a mountainous landscape north of Verona. After a total of 5 months and more than 1,000 kilometers, the young wolf's Odyssey is nearing its end. Former cross-country ski world champion Fulvio Falbusa today works as a forest supervisor here and knows the park well. It's perfect wolf country, broad plateaus furrowed by deep valleys. With its highlands and peaks over 1,500 meters high, the Lecinian Alps are sparsely populated, a magnificent landscape, offering ample prey for wolves. Fulvio takes Hubert to the site where, in April 2012, he had a fascinating encounter with Slavko and his mate. To Europe's wolf researching community, it was a sensation.
I saw them come out here. First Slavko, then Giulietta. We were doing something, but then I took my binoculars, looked, and said, "Luca, it's Slavko and Giulietta."
Slouch and Giulietta.
I grabbed my camera, put on a long lens, and went click, 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 right here.
Click, click, here, there.
And you got the first evidence that they are together.
Yeah.
We knew that wolves from Slovenia and wolves from the Western Alps will sooner or later meet somewhere in between. But honestly, none of us expected this to happen so quickly. So it's really exciting to see the first litter of Slavko and Giulia in Lesinia. But we already knew that Slavko and Giulia were there. How? Well, for Slavko was easy because we had the GPS data. And for Giulia, we used a number of genetic techniques using scats and hairs. Extracting the DNA from this material, we could find out the specific peculiarities of the DNA of a female from the Western Alps.
Collating all the available data has revealed that Giulia left her parents' pack on the French-Italian border in 2011. She migrated across Piedmont and followed the Po Basin eastward until she ultimately reached La Signa National Park, where, in April 2012, she met Slavko. Together they marked out a territory of their own and started a family. For the last time, our actors from Hungarian animal trainer Zoltán Horkály's center slip into the roles of Slavko and Giulia to reenact this incredible story. For their part, the scientists have furnished proof that the separate branches of the European wolf population can be interlinked due to the long-distance migrations of lone wolves, who provide for genetic exchange. Archive footage from 2013 shows that the couple has succeeded in founding a family. And it's obvious that Giulia is expecting again. Meanwhile, wolves have re-established a habitat in the Lycinian Alps. The fact that they occasionally prey on local livestock doesn't meet with everyone's approval. Wolf expert Luigi Boitani pleads for a broader view.
Long-term coexistence means compromise. And compromise means that both parties have to learn how to give up something. Humans have to learn how to tolerate some damage, and the wolf population will have to tolerate some removal. It's not an impossible recipe. I think we can do that.
Slowly but surely, the wolf is returning to Central Europe. After a century of being hunted to extinction, in many regions the number of specimens is on the rise once again, not least due to the input of long-distance migrators, who provide a vital link between the separate populations in different parts of the continent. Step by step, wolves are regaining their original habitats that belong to them as much as they do to us.